Here are 6 Pokemon cards you should buy in April 2026. I have 3 vintage and 3 modern cards that I want to take a look at. Let's jump right into it. Number 6. I got some weird ones in here, but this is not one of them. We're going to start off with one of the vintage cards that I'm talking about. This Blastoise from the Platinum set. As you can see, this card looks pretty cool. It's just, a standard vintage tier holo. The Blastoise is in pretty action-y pose. The water effect is really cool, and this card just looks great in person. And see that we're talking about a fairly cheap card here, especially for something vintage. This card came out in 2009, so quite a while ago. You got the holo and reverse holo in Canadian prices here, $48 and $44-ish dollars. And if we look at the trends here, we'll just focus on the holo. It kind of spiked up a few months ago, the end of last year. It's actually starting to come down now, which I think is pretty interesting. So maybe if you don't pull the trigger on this one right away, it's definitely a card you want to keep your eye on. Let's pop over to price charting, where I like to take a look at the USD prices and get a longer outlook of how this has trended over time. You can see only $23 USD with a bunch of sales in that price range. The PSA 10 is a crazy jump, which is often the case with this era of vintage cards. So if you care about that kind of thing, it's going to cost you a lot there. If you don't care about grading, you can get a solid LP copy for quite a good price, in my opinion. You can see it was pretty steady for a while, for years and years and years. It's kind of the market as a whole has risen up, as we all know. I think this feels like a really safe bet to have a great card in your collection and get it for a great price. Okay, now let's jump to card number 5. Let's switch over to a more modern card for this one. Most of you are probably familiar with this beloved Lovebirds card here, the Latias Latios GX. Now, this is not the card I'm recommending because the price on this thing is ridiculous. It is thousands of dollars to get it. What I do want to point out is that there is the less rare version of it, this Latias Latios GX from the same set. Very similar to the Gardevoir card that I showed in the last month. I think it's a great idea to get the lesser version of this card. There's actually 3 Latias GX cards in this team-up set, but this is the one I personally prefer out of the 2 cheaper ones. And it's actually the cheapest of the 3. It's just because it's a rare holo. But this one, not really like the Lovebirds at all, is a much more action-oriented pose. I think it's just a solid-looking card. The Sun and Moon era wasn't my favorite, but definitely the tag team cards are kind of cool. And I regret not collecting for that year or so when these were first coming out, because now they're becoming crazy expensive, like the Lovebirds card. So $80-ish Canadian is pretty expensive for a card, but it is not the thousands of dollars that the Lovebirds card is. You can actually see it kind of had a bit of a heyday up to almost $100 Canadian here, and has been coming down pretty steadily over time. I expect it'll kind of level out here. I mean, if it drops to 60-ish, great. You could think about waiting for that, but I doubt it. I really doubt it's going to go back that low unless the whole market shifts down, and doesn't really seem to be slowing down anytime soon. There's a lot of stuff propping it up, so I don't think that's going to happen in the short term. Let's pop over and take a look at the USD price on price charting, $51 here. You can see it was, like I was saying, tag team cards were really cheap for a really long time, and then just skyrocketed up. Even this one of the cheapest tag team cards still had that effect happen, and it jumped way up. It's kind of stayed up at this higher price point tier here. You can see, unlike the last card, there's a much less of a jump between the PSA 10 and the ungraded. So that would be more in reach if that's something you care about. I personally don't. I would go for the ungraded and binder it. So I'm going to bide my time a little bit on this card and see if I can grab a deal on it. But it's definitely something that I've added to my wish list to get sooner than later. Okay, I told you we're going to get a little weird with this. So for card number 4, we're going back to a vintage card with this Ruby and Sapphire Manectric. This is a proper vintage card, all the way back to 2003 with these e-reader series cards. Now, the e-reader series is something that I don't like the look of cards in general. But something about this Manectric is intriguing, and it could just be the mood I'm in, and you're going to see it in the other vintage card that I have queued up for you guys. But the pose he has here, him being on an angle, just a lot of intriguing choices by the artist here that makes me like this card. And the other thing that really makes me like this card is the price. It's less than $24 Canadian. You can get a reverse holo, which looks a little bit worse than the holo because this has like a kind of a cool effect with the darkness of it. So I definitely recommend the holo version and not the reverse holo. But $24 is pretty reasonable for a card that is more than 20 years old. I would expect these sets, the Ruby and Sapphire era of cards, is going to go up in price over time. It's not like there's more of them coming out. The packs themselves are pretty expensive, and yeah, there really wasn't that many of them printed. You can see there's been a decent little incline by more than double, but it's such a low price point at the start. So $10 down here up to $24 here. You can see it's leveling out over the past month or so. But really at any price point in this range, I think this is a totally reasonable card to grab. Especially if you like vintage stuff, things that are kind of more menacing, more weird, more intriguing. It's definitely not a cutesy card by any means, so you have to kind of be into something like this, but I think it's quite cool. So we can pop over to the USD price. You can see only $10-ish USD. It's pretty crazy, and over time, it's been so steady, and you don't get that, we don't see that crazy jump that we see with a lot of these other cards, even the other two that we looked at. It has gone up, of course, but it wasn't that huge, like doubling spike, at least in price charting's eyes. Now, just like most vintage cards, the PSA 10, 30 times as much as the ungraded. I personally, again, would stick with the ungraded, especially at a price point this low. I'd actually wager this is probably lower than you'll be able to get it for, but you can see that some people are buying cheap damaged versions. For somewhere between $10 and $20, you can grab this card for yourself. I think it's really cool. This is a card that most people are going to not be aware of. So if you're into having some kind of unique stuff, you know, true collector kind of thing, this is a card for you. Okay, let's look at card number 3. We're back to the modern on this one. And the card I'm talking about here is this Mightyena from Ascended Hero. So very recently released. Again, this is kind of a weird looking card, but in a very intriguing way again. This card here is only $13 Canadian. And I think really the reason for that is that Ascended is just loaded with cards since it's a specialty set and has a lot of high expense cards. This one's way down there because of that. I'm sure, you know, like most modern stuff, there's tons of them printed. Ascended Heroes is still in print because it's so recent. And I expect that we're going to see more and more Ascended Heroes products coming out because there's kind of a weird release cycle with them. So don't expect to buy this card and have it, you know, quadruple in price for the next month. I'm really suggesting buy this card because it's sweet and because it's not expensive. We can take a quick gander here at the price chart of it. Just like every card that gets released nowadays, it starts higher, drops down, and then over time it'll trend back up. And sometimes it happens pretty quickly. So if you go back through sets, you'll see this exact chart pretty much every single time, except for, you know, the mega hyper rares and the super high tier rarity stuff. Sometimes they release and stay there and go higher right away. You know, like the Victini from Black and White, stuff like that. You can pop over to price charting again on this. It's so recent that you're not really super useful, but you can see, you know, $10 USD card. Some people being able to get it even cheaper than that with this $6 one. And pretty much everything's going to be near mint because it came out just like a couple months ago. Definitely think that this card is cool looking. It's not like a lot of the other cards in the Ascended Hero set. It stands out in a cool way. Anytime you have a dark card with this red effect, I think they look awesome. This is a card that I'm definitely going to be looking to pick up really soon, if possible, in the next week or so. All right, our second to last card here is actually a card that I think is pretty ugly and kind of awkward looking, and not in necessarily an endearing way. It's just straight up ugly. But because it is this Team Aquas Kyogre from the very original Team Magma versus Team Aqua set, I think this card may actually be a little underpriced right now. And you're going to see some weird stuff with it, mainly driven by the fact that there's a deck variant that's non-holo here. So you can see there's the holo version of 68, reverse holo at 75-ish, and then the fully non-holo deck version at $6-ish. And a lot of times, pricing and stuff that you'll see mixes this in, which makes it look weird, which we'll see in the price trading thing for sure, which I'll show you in a second. You know, the outlook of this card has been super stable for the most part. It kind of jumped up but only $10-ish from a year ago, and has been super steady since then. This is more, I think, if you're caring to collect for money, that it would be more of a long-term play kind of card. But these things are always cyclical, so this, you know, era of cards is going to have its heyday. It's super old, 2004, so more than 20 years old. And people really like the Team Magma and Team Aqua cards. You know, there was the X and Y era Team Magma versus Team Aqua, and those cards are really awesome. I have the Kyogre, and it's one of my favorite cards. And that thing is crazy expensive now. Yeah, so for $68-ish, and I would wager you can get it cheaper than that if you just be a little patient and look around, because it's a low moving card. Like, not a lot of people are buying them constantly, that you could definitely make a deal for a card like this. This flat picture doesn't necessarily do it justice, but the holo effect on these cards are very cool looking. And again, it's another like e-reader series card, so it has this kind of ugly dot pattern that I'm really happy they moved away from. But with this water darkness effect, it kind of saves itself. Normally I would just skip this because I've been doing it for all the other cards. I'll show you price charting real quick. It's not that useful because that exact issue I was telling you about, where price charting is not smart enough to separate the non-holos from the holo pricing, so things are driven way down. You can see here there's some of the holo cards in here, which are $20 to $50-ish or more. And the PSA 10 is absolutely crazy expensive for all the reasons that I basically said. It's really old, it's very niche, low moving, you know, 4 sales per year of the PSA 10, 1 sale per week of the ungraded tier, and that's not a lot for a card. Then we can pop back to this Mightyena, 1 sale per day. So literally 7 times as much for a modern card compared to this. Really important thing here, we can see the trend is pretty stable. And actually didn't have like as crazy of a spike up. If anything, it shows that it's going down, but I would wager that's just from the grouping issues. Definitely a cool, weird card. Again, lots of cards in this month that are just like, if you're a collector, these are really kind of niche things that I think stand out in unique ways. Kind of like the true first edition Machamp from last month, that I think, you know, everyone's always chasing grails, but these are sneaky cool additions to people's collections. Okay, we're on to our final card here. We're looking at the Hydreigon EX from White Flare. So another modern card that just came out, you know, half a year or so ago. Let's see when it actually came out. Yeah, almost a full year at this point. The middle of last year, stuff was going crazy. White Flare Black Bolt came out as kind of semi-specialty sets. Sets that I malign because they did that stupid Pokeball pattern thing that I really hate that Pokemon is doing. But without that, these sets would be awesome because they just have some great artwork in them. And this card, I think, gets a little overshadowed because you have that red Victini and the white Reshiram in this set. And personally, I think those are pretty overrated visually, even if you see them in person, especially the red Victini. I really don't like the look of that one. A card like this, however, I think is underrated. It's an SIR, so it is low pull rate to get this thing, and it is under $100. And I would go as far to say that this is probably the best looking card in the whole set. Somewhat subjective, but it's definitely top 3 in there. There are some cool cards. This one stands out immensely to me. The really cool Thunderstorm effect, with Hydreigon being, you know, a little bit smaller, but almost more focused because he's in the sky there. I find that very intriguing. I like the card quite a bit because of that. And again, under $100 for an SIR in today's pricing is pretty good. It's pretty rare for that to happen. There are other cases, usually it's a trainer card that gets that low. A lot of times you find SIRs in the 100 to 250 range. We can see here with the pricing, it did that thing these cards always do. Start out really high on release and then level down, and normally you would see it start to spike up here a little bit, maybe not too much, but up to this line. Actually kind of continue to just trend down very, very slowly. So I would wager it's because there's been more releases of White Flare and Black Bolt over time, and they're still printing it, which is great. I actually got some of it, you know, 6 weeks or so ago. Did not pull this card, unfortunately, but it's always fun to open these sets because there's lots of good IRs in them and good SIRs like this Hydreigon. So pricing, pretty reasonable. You could probably find a deal because people are going to see that it's trending down. So you could get less than definitely less than $100 for this card. It's going to level out just because of the rarity. You know, in a couple months when they stop printing this set, I expect it will go up. It's just how these things work. We can pop over to price charting and look at the USD prices. And, you know, the graph, exact same story we were just looking at, just slowly trended down, but, you know, very stable here for quite a while. And the ungraded at $70-ish USD feels like a pretty reasonable price to me. And you're going to be able to get a really good condition card. This would be a card that would definitely make sense if you care about grading to just for the PSA 10. It's way less of a percentage jump than all the other cards we looked at just a little more than double. Again, personally, I would not go for graded cards. I think it's a poor decision, but I'll let you make that decision for yourself. I like to put my stuff in binders and, you know, look at them more closely and not be beholden to these grading companies that seem very subjective. Regardless of that, this is a cool card. Totally reasonable price for an SIR. Absolutely would recommend this one. All right, I wanted to just keep this one short and sweet so I can get it out quickly. I threw some weird cards in here. I just decided to, you know, get a little weird with this month's. I have some good cards queued up for next month that I'm keeping an eye on to see how they start behaving over the next few weeks. And it'll almost be time to start looking retroactively at some of the past few months to see how some cards did. I know there's a couple that went up like 30-ish% in less than 2 months since I recommended them. So definitely some good stuff in there. Appreciate you watching. Make sure you check out these other videos. Thanks.